he said to me, but in our exchange, he said something to me, I said something back to him, and his response to me was, dang, why do you always have to be so negative about everything? And that, sometimes when you're a parent, it's easy enough to just say to your kid, well, because I said so, or because I'm the parent and whatever. But in that moment, I was like, uh-oh. And what he said to me, it really sort of hit me right in the heart and kind of convicted me. And
Yep.
so I took a step back and was like, why am I so negative? And
welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations, folks. It's Audley Stevenson back for another edition of the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. This is the Audacious Living Podcast, and I appreciate you for being here as we continue our ongoing goal of helping our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. As always, I encourage you to follow us on our social media channels. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the handle The Audacious Pod, or you can subscribe on YouTube simply by tapping that bell down below. Ding, ding, ding. And you're connected to all great things audacious related. Now, I've got author Stephen Crane joining me on this edition of the Audacious Living Podcast for a conversation about being more appreciative of the things we have in life. Stephen is the author of the book I Can Appreciate That, which is a memoir of gratitude and a collection of essays exploring game-changing blessings hiding in some of life's biggest challenges and setbacks. This is something I'm sure we all can relate to, and it makes for a powerful conversation. Stephen is here to share his story, the adversity he has to overcome on the journey, and he's had to take to get up to where he is now. Like I said, it's a fun chat that I'm certain you'll all enjoy. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Stephen Crane. Enjoy. Hey, Stephen, thank you for joining me today here on the Audacious Living Podcast. I'm always appreciative and thankful for individuals coming to hang out like this. So thank you for being here. I appreciate this.
hey, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Now, lots of good stuff to talk about here. I mean, on this podcast, we spend so much time talking about the things that we can do to live our best audacious lives ever. And oftentimes, the thing that gets in the way is this thing called adversity, and we've got to get past that. And we all know life is not easy. There are challenges going to come, and it's important for us to get past that adversity to get to that best audacious life. So I thought maybe it makes sense to open up the conversation. I know you're right, and you spend a lot of time ensuring that people can understand the importance of appreciating life and all that it has to offer. So maybe as a starting point, maybe get you to talk about the work you do and how you got here.
Yeah, sure. So by trade, I'm an advertising writer.
Okay.
And so that gives me some flexibility to pursue my other interests, which involve writing other things other than advertising. So I'm a contract writer, and around the time that the world shut down for COVID, I was doing a whole lot of contract writing and went from, I don't know whether you've heard the phrase feast or famine, but my industry definitely works that way. And
Right.
I went from having a whole lot of work to do to having next to nothing to do, as a whole bunch of clients took a step back and said, whoa, hold on, what are we doing now?
Right.
And so I had a whole bunch of free time. And at around that time, I'm also the father of two teenage boys. And I was having a conversation with one of my sons, and I don't even know exactly what he said to me, but in our exchange, he said something to me, I said something back to him, and his response to me was, dang, why do you always have to be so negative about everything? And that, sometimes when you're a parent, it's easy enough to just say to your kid, well, because I said so, or because I'm the parent and whatever. But in that moment, I was like, uh-oh. And what he said to me, it really sort of hit me right in the heart and kind of convicted me. And
Yep.
so I took a step back and was like, why am I so negative? And I knew instinctively some of the answers to those questions, but I felt like I really needed to answer that question, not only for him, but also for myself. And
Right.
so that began a process of me taking a step back and looking at my life and trying to figure out from an adversity standpoint, why am I so negative? Why, when things happen to me, is my default response, dang, that sucks, or I wish it wasn't that, or why does it always have to happen to me, or these negative thoughts. And so I spent about a year writing, thinking, researching, praying, meditating, having conversations with family and friends. And the result of that turns out to be the book I Can Appreciate That, which is a series of 9 or 10 autobiographical essays where I go back and I look at all these things in my life,
Yep.
which some of them are, small, simple things like, losing a job, or, coaching Little League baseball, whatever. And some of them are these big, gigantic things like being born with their birth defects, or losing a loved one to cancer, things of that nature. And
Right.
we're just sort of reevaluating all of those things and figuring out why my immediate reaction to those things was so negative, and what I might be able to do to change that outlook.
It's really interesting is the spark for you was just simply conversation with your son. And sometimes it just goes to show you that regardless of what your age, you can have an impact and get and spark some form. And kids are good for that.
Every day, man, they keep you honest. They will call you to the carpet. They'll rock your world, man. Being a parent is the best, most awesome, and hardest job in the world.
I concur 100%. Talk a bit about the process that you went through. I mean, to go from and first and foremost, I got to give you credit for starting that journey, because it's not an easy one, right? To be able to take that deep dive into yourself and analyze your own behaviors or actions. It's far easier to say it's someone else's problem, it's someone else's issue, but to look at yourself first isn't something that easy for a lot of people. So I got to congratulate you on that journey.
Well, so thank you, and you're right. It's not a simple task, but it's super rewarding. There are a lot of places where along that journey you go, oh, yikes! That's why I think this way. That's why I do this. That's why my relationship with my child is the way that it is. That's the reason my relationship with my parent is the way that it is. Oh my gosh, that's the reason that my relationship with God is the way that it is. And so you have all these epiphanies, and it's interesting. In the last year or so since the book's been out, I've had a chance to have a lot of conversations with people who've known me very well, and people who
Right.
don't know me at all. And some people who have known me my whole life, they've read this book and said, wow, that book is basically a reintroduction to you for me. And my honest response to that is, yeah, me too. I actually met myself in some ways for the first time through that process, some of which were, positive and maybe feel pretty good, and some of which were like, oh, well, there's a blind spot. There's something I really need to work on. That's a problem.
Right. Explain the title. I can appreciate that. How did you land on that?
Yeah. So that is so I'll turn around and I'll ask you a different question. What's your definition of the word appreciate?
What's my definition of appreciate? Is being thankful for the things that I have been given to me.
Perfect. So as a writer, when I think about words, a lot of times the first place I'll go is the dictionary, right? And so I had this sense of the seed of appreciation was planted for me. I was in a conference listening to a pastor speak about foster care, which is a ministry that we've been involved in. My wife, my family, and I have been involved in that for the last several years. When I was listening to him speak, and he used the word appreciate in in a way that I didn't expect. It was sort of non-traditional. And so it sort of stuck in my head. And I went back and I looked up the definition of appreciate, and I found that there are actually 4 unique definitions of that word.
Okay.
And the one that you gave is certainly one of them. But so here are the 4 definitions of the word appreciate. And they sort of basically build this pyramid sort of foundation, right? So the first one is to just be able to recognize that something exists, right? So you can look outside your window and say, oh, there's a car out there. Now I can appreciate that that's out there, right? You just recognize that something exists.
So a form of acknowledgement.
Yeah, exactly. Simple acknowledgement.
Okay.
Yep. The second one is to be able to recognize the worth of something. So, oh, I can see that there's a car outside there. If I needed to go somewhere, that would be helpful. I can appreciate the value of that thing that exists.
Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha.
That's you take a step up. That's another level of importance. Right. The third is what you suggested, to be grateful for something. Man, if I needed to get to work on time, or if I had a medical emergency, or if my kid was stranded somewhere, I sure would be grateful there's a car right out there that, I sure can appreciate that car. Right.
Yep.
The fourth is, think about it in terms of maybe like monetary or financial or real estate, right? So to appreciate is to raise in value, right? My portfolio appreciates, my net worth appreciates, whatever.
Yes.
So when you're able to take what you're given and use it to help yourself, or even better, to help other people, you are raising the value of something. When I take that car and I go and I deliver Meals on Wheels, or I go and I take my kid to school, or I rescue somebody who's stranded or whatever, I'm using what's given to me to help myself or someone else, and I'm appreciating the value of that thing. So you get this sort of stair-step effect of these 4 unique meanings of the word appreciate that allow you to sort of go, okay, I see it, I get it, I'm grateful for it. Now I'm going to grow what I've been given, right? So when you literally look at any situation in your life, and even if it is born out of adversity, you go, oh, okay, that's what happened to me. Now I understand it. Now, if I look at it enough, with enough hindsight, or with the right context, I can really be grateful that that seemingly terrible thing happened to me. Now, what can I do with that experience that actually makes my life better, or even better, make somebody else's life better? I can appreciate that.
Makes sense. And I it's funny when we go into the definitions. Yeah, they're all actually bang on correct and accurate for sure. But it makes you sort of think about it in different ways, right? In terms of when we talk about what appreciation is, and I think the next sort of word that works hand in hand with that is gratitude, right? There's appreciation and gratitude. Can you make the distinction between the two, just for our listeners?
Well, so gratitude is really sort of almost specific to that last level, that last definition, right? So gratitude is being grateful. So it's the last two, right? It's being grateful for something, but then it's how you oftentimes it's how you show gratitude. It's what you do with what you're given, right? So you can feel gratitude, but that's usually a gift given to you by something else or someone else. Right. But to express gratitude is to actually do something with those blessings and to share it. So it's sort of those last two definitions of appreciate that are most fundamentally wrapped up in gratitude. But you're right, they're linked inexorably.
Yeah. As we talk about appreciation, and something that's hard to do for people, and justifiably so, is appreciate lessons as you're going through adversity, right? Like when tough times come and it's painful and it sucks and it hurts and it doesn't feel good, to be able to appreciate a lesson in those times is very, very difficult. But if we truly do look, there is a lesson in adversity, isn't there?
Almost all the time. And the challenging part of that is, I mean, you and I can have a conversation, and it may seem simple, but the challenging part of that is that oftentimes it does take some hindsight. It does. Some things are pretty immediate. Sometimes, you can have an experience and like you can have like a near miss accident on the highway and like almost immediately like, oh my God, I'm so thankful. I'm so grateful that I'm still here. And you think about your wife and your kids and, oh my God, I'm still here. I'm super grateful for that. Right.
Yeah.
Not everything works like that. Sometimes, I don't know, take something truly terrible, like a natural disaster or a loved one dying or something like that. It can take years, and I mean years and decades, for you to heal enough, for you to get enough distance, enough perspective on something where you go, oh, okay, well, so here's why not why that happened to me, but because that happened to me, here's all these amazing blessings that happened to me.
Yes.
I lost this person, but actually, as a result of that, this person came into my life. Or, I lost that job, but look at the job that replaced it. Look at the people that I have now met that I never would have. Look at the opportunity I've been given. Look at the growth that I've experienced in ways that never would have happened if I hadn't been fired, or I hadn't, been laid off, or, something completely beyond my control hadn't happened. That, in the first, immediate moment, you're like, oh my God, this is terrible. Why did this happen to me?
Right.
Well, that's why it happened to you, because there's something better waiting for you right around the corner.
It's just tough. It's just tough in the moment, but you're absolutely right. Like it's there. It's available to us, whatever that blessing is. It's just tough to be able to say, okay, what is it? And sometimes I think there's a value when we can sort of pause and stop and give it a chance to sort of slow things down and reflect, because it's hard in that exact moment. Stephen, it's tough. But if you give yourself some distance, some space, it makes sense. Just need the time.
Yeah, I mean, you have to give it time. They say that time heals all wounds, but that is, man, that's a tough pill to swallow when you're waiting.
Yeah. And there's also a little bit of I guess maybe rewiring, if you will. Like if you see everything as from a negative standpoint, and that's how you approach things, to be able to do what we're just talking about, you've got to be able to switch that. And so that's where kind of the reframing or the rewiring in our own minds. But that's not an easy thing to do. Can you sort of talk about sort of maybe steps that people can do to rewire their thinking?
Well, so it is not easy to do, but it's a gradual process. And if you think about, I'm sure you've heard the phrase garbage in, garbage out, or, you are what you think, things like that. If you think about the voices that you allow inside your head, for the most part, one of the loudest and most constant voice is your own, is the own voice that you put in there with the things that you tell yourself. And then you add all the other things in your world, whether it's what news channels do you listen to? What podcasts do you listen to? Who are your family voices? Who are your friend voices? Who, is your pastor a voice? The things that you put in your brain, the voices that are talking to you, those form your outlook, in large part. And so what you surround yourself with, what you immerse yourself in, becomes your outlook to a certain extent. What you read, what you watch on TV, all these things. So in that year of me thinking and praying and meditating and researching and all these things, all of it was about gratitude. All of it was about appreciation. And so I like to say that I literally spent a year marinating my brain in the spirit of appreciation and gratitude, which over the course of time, it does literally flip a switch in your head. You do tend to. So if I ask that same teenage child who originally accused me of being super cynical and negative, am I a different person, a year or two later? He would probably say, no, you're still negative. You're still cynical. You're still, glass half empty, whatever. And he's not wrong about that. You're to a certain degree, you are who you are, and
That's
some things, some things are sort of forever.
right.
But am I much slower to get angry about stuff? Yeah. Am I more thoughtful about why things happen? Am I more willing to accept the blessings that are hidden inside the challenges? Do I see them easier? All those things. Yes, my outlook is changed. My thinking is changed, and what I can see for the future is changed based on how I'm considering what's happened in the past.
Mm-hmm. That process, as it's funny, that one question I'm going to ask you is that process, did it make you a better person, father, husband? Like, what did that do to you overall?
I would like to think the answer to all those questions is yes. We still fall into all the same traps, right? The things that bother me the most about the things that bother my wife or my children about me the most are probably still the same, as they were before I started that process. But particularly as being a parent, all of those things, when you get a chance to talk to your own parents about their experience and to get a sense of what it was, for you as a child and them as a parent, that informs your relationship with your own children. To think about the work that you've done in helping schools or coaching kids or in foster care and all that stuff, and to think about all that stuff, that informs how you interact with your own children as a parent. So yeah, I would like to think that the process of purposefully going through it all and writing it down and having to really sit in it and think about the causes and the consequences of all those things. I would like to think that there's a net positive change there in my parenting style and being a husband and all that.
Right. Well, I think awareness is the first step, Stephen. Right. So again, it's not that it changes, this process changed you, but it made you more aware. And I think that's a positive step in the right direction, because you're not operating just on default anymore. And if you have that awareness, once you have the awareness of something, you always give yourself an opportunity to change or get better, right? And you just need to know what's happening. And so like when I talk about awareness, it's similar, like you walk into a room, and the lights off and it's dark, right? Well, awareness is a light switch. So you turn that light switch on, and all of a sudden you can see what's in the room. It wasn't like the things were put in there; they were always there. The light switch allowed you to see it. And then once you see it, you still have the chance to do something about it. You might fall back in the same habits or traps, but at least when you have that awareness, and that accounts for something, I would say.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually a really good analogy. Bringing stuff into the light. Absolutely.
Yeah. What did it do for your faith?
Well, so how long do we have? That's an episode all by itself, probably. But I don't know that this particular exercise was particularly clarifying there, because I would say that the issue that I had with faith was resolved previous to me starting writing. But and I credit my wife and God, duly for resolving that issue. But so I guess I was raised in a fairly non-traditional, non-denominational Christian church, but grew up in the church, right? And went every Sunday and had good experiences there, and had lots of friends, and had what I would say it would be a pretty secure and pretty good, positive relationship with God. Mm-hmm. About the time I was 17, 18 years old, 19 years old, my sister, who was 2 years older than me, was diagnosed with cancer. And she subsequently passed away when I was 20 and she was 23. Okay. At that point, And when I went to college, I had sort of drifted away. I wasn't really going to college anymore. It wasn't like I was, super mad at God or anything like that. I just sort of stopped going, right? When my sister passed away, hard stop. I was like, wait a minute. So the thing that I like prayed the hardest for in my whole life, the thing that I needed more than anything else in my whole life, God pretty much said, nah, you're not getting that. All right, I'm done with you, and so I I turned my back on all of that and went into the wilderness for a lot of years, and just was super done with all of that. And then a number of years later, I met my wife, and her faith was super strong, and her desire for us to have shared faith and to raise children in the church and all of that was very important. And so we went on a journey of trying to find a church that would be uh, suitable for both of us. Again, I grew up in a very non-traditional, non-denominational church. She grew up in a Southern Baptist church, was very traditional. So
Right.
just without all of the hurdles and all that, it was going to be difficult enough to find something that was going to work for both of us. And I had up all these walls, and I was, not really into it, whatever, but I was trying to walk that line of making her happy while I was trying very hard not to be pleased with any of the options that we explored. And we lived like that for a little while.
Right.
And I think she was close to giving up on that. And then one day at random, we got this postcard in our mailbox. And it was basically, I'll forget the exact words, but it was basically like, um, uh, wear your jeans, bring your coffee, all out rock and roll worship to God where you can be yourself and know that you're loved. And, come to this church. And so, I kind of looked at that and went, or she brought it to me and said, hey, we got this. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, crud, we're going to this place. Cause like it had I couldn't find any holes in it. Right. It was all the things that, there was nothing objectionable about it.
Right.
And so
And I'm sure you looked for it.
what's that?
I'm sure you looked for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So we go to this place and I'm almost sort of looking for a problem, right? Almost looking
Yeah.
for a reason why this isn't going to work and whatever,
Yeah.
because I'm negative and cynical and whatever. And first time we were there, I was like, all right, well, music's really good. The message was good. I can relate to that. It kind of reminded me of some of the stuff in my childhood. I don't have a problem with this. The problem was that I didn't have a problem, right? And so we were riding home from that first experience, and I think she was expecting me to find a problem with it, and I was like, I don't really have a problem with that. So we ended up going back, and long story short, we've now been at that church for 12, 13 years. Our kids have grown up in that church, and actually, I guess it's been closer to 15 years. Our kids have grown up there. They've met all these wonderful friends. We've met all these lifelong friends. And years later, probably, I don't know, 10 years into our relationship there, I was talking to somebody who worked at that church. They were asking how we got there. And I told them the story of that postcard. And they said, oh, that's cool. I was actually on the team that helped put those together. And they said, where do you live? And I told him where we lived. And he kind of looked at me and he got this big old smile on his face. And he goes, I can tell you with 100% certainty, we didn't send any of those postcards to your zip code. He goes, I know where we sent them. And we live probably 20 minutes away. So we didn't send any of them. None of our neighbors got one. They didn't send them anywhere near our house. That postcard shows up in my mailbox and was basically God making a house call and basically saying, hey, come on back. We got some unfinished business. We need to talk again. Right. And so, so that's a very long story about the power of restoring faith. But what I've learned in all that is that you can turn your back on God, but all that means is that He's behind you, waiting for you to turn back around and come talk to Him again. and he'll wait as long as it takes, right? You can't outwait God.
There's so much to be said in terms of going back and reaching for the lesson and experiences, and when you can do that, they're so powerful, and they're vivid. They're right there in front of you. You're like, wow, this is the lesson I'm supposed to come with. And so you clearly have done that over and over again through your experiences. You talked about losing your sister to cancer. I want you to sort of talk about what that ordeal was like as you were going through because now this would have been before you wrote the book, or is that correct?
Oh yes, yeah. So again, I'm thanks for confusing that, because I'm like 50 now. and that happened when I was 20. So
Okay.
again, that's one of those things that it took me decades to really sort of, you're never really whole again after something like that happens, and you're never really 100% okay with that.
Yes.
But after decades of distance and healing, you get to a place where you're like, all right, well, I can at least process that completely and understand it and have some sort of appreciation for what was there. Even if I'm still sad and frustrated about what I've lost, I can still fully appreciate what I had.
And again, that's again, the appreciation thing. It's big, Steve. It really is. And I think even in my own personal life were moments where in the moment, and that's why I said, talked about how hard it is, because in the moment it is so difficult. It really is. And I don't want to. I want to be very respectful to people as they're going through challenging moments. I don't want to minimize them by going, there's a lesson there for you, because you're not doing honor and service to what they're experiencing, right? At the end of the day, their feelings are still their feelings, their emotions are still their emotions, and what they're going through is very, very real, right? But at the same time, you know that when the dust settles, so to speak, and it's all said and done, there's something that we should be taking from those experiences.
Absolutely. So that experience of losing my sister is very intertwined with the whole journey of my faith and all of that. It's sort of what caused, well, not sort of, it's primarily what caused the break in my relationship with God, but it's also part of what helped restore it and repair it, right? Because unfortunately, and I'm certainly not alone in this, but the experience of losing people to cancer is sort of a recurring experience in my life. And I suspect that, a lot of people have had that shared experience where, they lost somebody or multiple somebodies.
Right.
In my experience, I actually went through a number of those experiences sort of in a short span of time. And my sister being the first, and then we had another family friend who was sick and ended up passing away. And then I had a neighbor who passed away. And this terrible thing happens, right? Where if you've had that experience enough, and depending on the outcomes that you get, you actually get to a place where you're like, you know what? Never mind. I'm not even going to, what's the point of praying about this? What's the point of, I've seen this movie before.
Right.
I kind of know how it ends. And one of the most regrettable places I've ever been in is in that place where a good friend of mine was having that terrible experience, and I didn't have anything to give, right? You can't pour from an empty cup.
Yes.
And I was literally an empty cup as it related to faith. And, I knew how it was going to end. And I wasn't able to be as good a friend as I could have been to him or to his family. You still do all the things, you still try and do all the right things, but I know deep in my heart that I didn't have anything to give there because I didn't have faith in that experience. I'd seen it before and knew how it ended. And so, have enough of those experiences. And then the last of those that I write about in the book is another friend of ours who is a few years younger than me, and we were having a group meeting, a small group meeting at our for small group at our church, and these people have been friends of ours for years and years, and so they share with us that he had gotten a diagnosis of cancer, and immediately all those things start coming up for me again and whatever. And the way that this group of people who we were good friends with, had known for years, and had sort of been doing life with them in the church and outside of the church, the way that they responded as a group was remarkable. They were not praying to God that he be healed. They prayed thanksgiving that he had already been healed. Right? They looked then and said, "Thanks God, we know you got this." And they were praying for the future that they already were certain was going to happen. And I'm sitting over there going, oh, wow, that can't be more different than being like the completely empty vessel, right? And so somehow, not surprisingly, he fully recovers. He's he's free of cancer to this day, and it's like this amazing sort of transformation for me in terms of not only that you pray, but how you pray. So praying for the thing that God, thanking him for the thing he's already done before it arrives, was like a transformational thought for me.
Right. The power of belief, that's all I'm thinking about as you're sort of recounting that story and how significant that is. And it's almost like a fuel to get you to that better place. Just believe you'll get there, right? And I mean, it may not always work out, but that belief still has to be strong.
Absolutely. So, and just to bring that whole topic full circle, and wrap it up in the idea of appreciation. The other person that I write about in the book as it relates to cancer is actually a young child, and he was a contemporary of my youngest son. Played in the same baseball league as him. We were never on the same team, but you kind of grow a community and family, and people and whatever. And so he became sick at a very young age, and he ended up passing away at about 9 or 10 years of age. And that was actually the straw that broke the back of me before my other friend got sick and I had run and I became the empty cup. That was the straw that broke my back, that made me the empty cup. In not in hindsight, but with enough perspective, whatever, now, having had enough experience with that and seen these amazing stories and how his family reacted, that even though he passed, the work that they're doing for cancer research and all of that is so inspiring. We still maintain relationship with his family, and some of those things are forever, right? So in the spirit of appreciation, every copy of I Can Appreciate that's sold generates a donation to a fund for Cure Childhood Cancer that is doing research to cure childhood cancer. And we're a very small drop in that bucket, but that fund just recently reached the threshold of raising $1 million for cancer research. So that's when you talk about what can you do with the situation, if anything that we're talking about happens to introduce somebody else to these concepts, and they're interested, and they come across the book and they'd say, oh, that's cool, their support generates support for cancer research, and you're paying it forward, right? It's that's how you appreciate tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, tragedy sucks, right? At the end of the day, and to ignore that or act like it's not there, it's not realistic, right? I oftentimes use the analogy of a hill, like the hills and valleys, right? And so the hill, at the top of the hill, that's where life is happy and you can celebrate and everything's good and things are great and everyone's having a good time. The valley is where the crappy stuff happens and no one wants to deal with, right? but you still have to go through it. So as you go through that valley, you can stay there and be miserable and complain, or find a way to get back up to the top of the hill as fast as you possibly can, right? So no one is saying not to go through dark moments. No one is saying not to have those experiences, because as humans, feelings are natural. We can't control when they come. We just have to deal with them when they arrive. So no one is saying not to go through the hill or through the valleys, but I'm saying rather go through them as quickly as you can so you can go back on top of the hill.
Right.
Right. So
Absolutely.
there you go. I see you make reference to injuries in World War II and mafia and baseball. Help me understand that. That's a lot going on there. Help me understand that, Stephen.
Yeah. So again, when I started writing all this, it was a cool opportunity for me to go back and talk to my parents and get not only some history on me, because I knew I was going to have to write about my own physical challenges and stuff like that. I was like, all right, so I don't remember being born. I don't remember being 1 or 2, whatever, all these things. So I go back and talk to my parents. It's like, all right, well, while I'm here, it's a great opportunity to talk to my parents about not only their lives, their childhood. Tell me about your parents. Tell me about your grandparents. People. I met my grandparents, but never my great grandparents, obviously, and all that. So got a little family history. And in talking to my dad in particular, this cool sort of story arc reveals itself, where my great grandfather on my dad's side was born in Italy, and he was actually as a very young man, at maybe 18 or 19 years old, was part of the Carabinieri, which is the presidential police. They're basically the Secret Service.
Yep.
Their job is to protect the Italian president and the highest ranking officials in the Italian government, right?
Okay.
So as a 19 or 20-year-old in the service of the Italian president, my great grandfather ends up killing 2 mafioso.
Okay.
So at that point, you have 2 options. Either you stay in Italy and you probably don't live very long, or you run, right? So he's like, all right, I'm out of here. And he left his, I guess, he was a very young man. He had a wife and he had 2 kids. And he left Italy and came to America. And so he works for several years, enough time to make enough money to go back over to Italy and get his wife and 2 kids, bring them back to America.
Gotcha.
They then have 3 more children, my grandfather being the first of which. So my grandfather is the first child to be born in America. Okay. My grandfather goes through school and all that, and is 18 or 19 years old when World War II breaks out.
Right.
And he becomes a flight navigator and bomber, rear bomber on B-17s. And so he wanted to be a pilot, but his eyesight wasn't good enough. So he becomes like a tail gunner on B-17s. Okay. The average lifespan of a tail gunner on a B-17 is like, I don't know, 9 or 10 missions. Statistically, they didn't survive that many missions. Okay. My grandfather flew like 26 missions, and which is almost statistically impossible, and gets discharged and comes back to America. Okay. And meets my grandmother on a double blind date. Okay. Then they have my dad, who turns out to be an excellent pitcher in baseball and gets a scholarship to college and is on such track that he's actually attracting the attention of Major League Baseball teams. Oh, wow. And he is scouted by several Major League teams and is almost certainly going to be a Major League pitcher. Sure. He's in practice one day. This is before they have like the protective L screens up, in front of pitchers. He's throwing batting practice, throws a ball to one of his teammates, and kid hits it right back up the middle, hits him right in his pitching hand, breaks a bunch of bones in his hand, never pitches again. Right. Stops playing baseball, starts selling cookware in the mall, meets my mom on a blind date, or meets my mom selling cookware, invites her out on a blind date, and that's how they get together. So if you put all of that together, right, like all of those things have to happen. All those ridiculous statistical impossibilities have to happen for me to even exist, right? For me to even be talking to you today, all those little things that are like matters of inches or seconds
Yes,
or
yes.
impossibilities, all of that has to happen, right? And everybody has a story like that.
That's right.
Everybody's existence is like the sum total of all these ridiculous little impossible moments, which makes you realize one of two things is true, right? Either it's all random and nothing matters, or there's some giant master plan that we're all part of. And spoiler alert, none of it matters because you don't have control over it, right? You can work a little bit, within the
Right.
system to make choices or whatever, but God's got all of that, right? So it kind of doesn't matter, So but it's helpful to think about it in terms of the latter instead of the former. That that there is some master plan that we're all sort of part of, and that we're all here for a reason. And all the things that all the generations before you went through just so you could exist.
Yes.
There's a meaning behind all that, and there's a reason that you're here. There's a reason that your kids are here, et cetera, et cetera.
And it's just acceptance of that, right? Like, this is what it
Yeah.
is. And I think part of it too is that sometimes the reason isn't fully realized in that moment, that it takes some time and maybe some soul searching or some reading or meditation or whatever before the answers reveal themselves. Because sometimes the answer's smack dab in your face, and other times it's a bit of digging you got to do to find it, right?
Absolutely. And again, in talking to people, having since written the book and all that, people will read that part of it and they'll read the family history and they'll go, wow, that's cool. I don't have a story like that. And my response is, yeah, you do. You just haven't researched it. Everybody has a story like that. And when you go back and you either talk to the living people who can help fill in those blanks, or you do the research on your own and you sort of get the fuller picture, it helps you truly appreciate the fact that you're even here, and makes you sort of kind of want to do something with being here.
Right. I hear you. It's very clear to me that that reflective time that you needed to take it, you've done that. But the part that I love, Stephen, absolutely, is you go through the experience, you figure out the lesson, but then you pass it on, right? So that whole aspect of sharing is just so tremendous. There's so much value in it, because you can easily shorten someone else's learning curve, right? Simply by sharing your own experiences. And I'm curious about, has this process, has it caused you to kind of share more as a result? Like, you're looking to share more just because of what you've gone through?
It certainly makes you more open to it, right? So in the process of that, some of the things that I write about are super happy and fun. Like, the 10 years I spent coaching my kids in youth baseball, there's so many fun memories. And I was like, oh, cool, I get to write a whole chapter about that. And that's like super fun. And then my wife was like, yeah, and you also have to talk about being born with spina bifida and losing your sister to cancer. And I was like, oh, crap. And so, yeah, you have to go through the good and the bad. And at the point that you realize that you're going to write a book and that you're going to put all that out into the world, you have to be okay with it, right? You have to, people that I've known my whole life who don't know some of these things about me are going to learn things about me that they didn't know. And some things that I've been hiding, or, stuff that I wouldn't just love people to know, that the world's going to know, whatever. And so you kind of have to be okay with it. You're at that point, you're literally an open book, and that's a hard thing to do. But it's, you weigh a lot less when you're done with that process, because there's nothing that you're holding on to. There's nothing, you kind of put it all out there, and things, be surprised how often the things that you think people are going to be the most critical of you for are the things that people look at you and go, dang, man, that's kind of cool, and it goes the other way.
I oftentimes say, when it comes to our children, I mean, that thing that drives you absolutely crazy in their youth will be the asset when they become adults, and the thing that people will look to them for, right? So, I mean, in class, maybe at school, you're told you were a talker, and you always talk. Well, when you get older, all of a sudden your ability to speak and connect and communicate with people will be something that's valued. So, weather the storm now. The parents would say weather the storm because it will become a value when they get older. Man, Stephen, this has been such a hearty and fruitful conversation. I'm so glad that first of all, you've taken the step that you've done. And again, I talked about the top of the personal work that you've taken on. It's not an easy thing. A lot of people wouldn't do it. So congratulations on doing that. And again, let's give the name of the book there for our listeners so they know what we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is called I Can Appreciate That. It's available in print and on ebooks. Pretty much anywhere you get books, Amazon, Apple, Barnes & Noble, Amazon primarily. And again, if you missed it off the top, a portion of every copy benefits cure childhood cancer. So I'm trying to do a little good in the world while we're at it.
You certainly are well on your way at it. And again, I can't say congratulations enough for going through that process, because there are a lot of people that know they need to and still won't. So the fact that you've done that, but again, the piece that I personally like is you've done that, then you share with others to help others along their way. So congratulations, thank you. For our listeners that want to catch up with you or learn more about your work, where can we send them?
So you can check out brainsofsteel.com, which again, I'm a advertising writer by trade. So there's some of my work in advertising there. Links to this book and another book that I've written that we don't even need to talk about. It's some basic information. So brainsofsteel.com, or you can check out I Can Appreciate That on Facebook, Instagram, or Amazon.
Very cool, very cool. Well, Stephen, listen, I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much. It was a great conversation. And again, congratulations on the great work.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Back we are on the podcast, and much thanks and appreciation goes out to Stephen for stopping by and telling us all about his book, sharing his story. Again, so awesome to have you here. The book, as we mentioned, is I Can Appreciate That, and its goal is to put an end to childhood cancer, which is definitely worthwhile cause to support. So again, Stephen, thank you for making the time to be here on the Audacious Living podcast. When I reflect on my conversation that I had with Stephen, I appreciated so much of what he shared with us. But if there's just one thing I take from our chat, it would have to be this. Appreciation is a powerful tool that can enhance our lives in a number of ways, as long as we put it into practice and find ways to incorporate it into our lives on a regular basis. Here are a few reasons why I think it's important for us to remember to show appreciation. When we appreciate someone, it makes them feel valued and their confidence increases. This can boost their morale, making them more motivated to continue doing their best. This has amazing benefits because it can help build a sense of trust and respect. Seeing the good in others and the world around us encourages us to adopt a positive mindset and an outlook on life. Appreciation also helps us to learn the strengths and successes of others. When we show gratitude towards others, we can learn valuable lessons that can help us grow. And then the last point I want to make is appreciation can also offer emotional support, and we also could use that and offer that to those around us, especially during difficult times. By showing gratitude towards others, we can provide them with a sense of comfort and much needed hope. Overall, appreciation is an essential part of living a happy, fulfilled life. It helps us build stronger relationships, promote personal growth, and supports those around us emotionally. We've come to the end of another edition of the Audacious Living Podcast, and I send my thanks and appreciation as always to our amazing listeners and those who love Audaciousness. I appreciate your tremendous ongoing support. Without you, we wouldn't be here. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.